Hello boys and girls, on my desk right now is a new Class 2 build based on the NerdRC Gremlin chassis. I love Class 2 builds, they are highly capable and there's a lot of room for creativity without getting overly complicated. I have a couple of Class 2 builds that I really love. This is one based on the Maz Designs cheat code chassis, and this other one is based on the Venge Gatekeeper chassis. There's a build video of both these trucks on my channel. Today, we are going to build another one using a chassis kit that, when I first saw it, I immediately knew it has a lot of potential. The kit comes with multiple front bumpers of various heights. Bumpers aren't required for Class 2 but could help prevent catching on the body. A pair of sliders for the electronics, body mounts. I also purchased the optional magnetic body mounts so I'd have mounts at different heights and angles, a transmission skid, and a battery tray. I also purchased NerdRC's hybrid suspension links, but it looks like they made a mistake and sent me two identical rear upper links. But not to worry, this is a fairly easy fix. All I gotta do is flatten one in a vise and then bend it the opposite way. There we go, problem solved. I selected NerdRC's Gremlin specific wheelbase, which overall is the same as Gladiator's wheelbase but with shorter fronts and longer rears. The front lower links are heavy brass bars, which helps place more weight forward and down low. I've never had links like this where there is metal to metal contact between the pivot balls and the links, but it's actually very smooth. Assembling this chassis kit is a fairly straightforward process, same as most other custom chassis kits. You start by securing the lower links onto the transmission skid and then install the skid onto the chassis rails, sandwiching it between the chassis rails and the sliders. These long sliders are designed to guide the rocks onto the rear tires to protect the body, just like how real rock sliders are supposed to work. Next, attach the upper links to the chassis rails. There are multiple mounting points to choose from so you can clock or tilt the axles forward and back. The rear upper links are designed to be mounted outboard on the outside of the chassis rails. This improves stability when sidetailing. The axles I've selected are Tiny Terrain's 12CV2. These axles are 6mm wider per side comparing to stock axles. They use TRX4m inner shafts because they are larger in diameter, therefore beefier and harder to break. There are a couple of axles that do this, Mofo RC's X15 and these Tiny Terrain's 12CV2. The knuckles and C-hubs are also compatible with TRX4Ms, which is why I'm taking the heavy Injora brass knuckles off of my TRX4M rock bouncer and using them on this build. I'm also changing out the axle gears with a set of 33% underdrive gears from Mofo RC in the front and their 53% underdrive gears in the rear. As with all my comp builds, I install a 3Flow9 RC roller bearing steering link to help slide against any rocks that may get caught under it. It's also made of brass, so it adds a bit of weight towards the front. I'm using Tiny Terrain's brass steering servo mount to add even more weight on the front axle. As mentioned, I'm installing 53% underdrive gears in the rear axle. Paired with the 33% underdrive in the front, I'm slowing down both front and back, but more in the back, so it results in a net 30% front overdrive. The reason I'm slowing down both axles is because I plan on using a Furitek Micro Komodo motor that spins a bit fast at 3,450 kV. This gear combination will slow down the motor and provide plenty of torque. I found a 3D printable diff slider online made by Nacho Crawler specifically for this axle. I made some modifications to it to make it longer. I'll link to it in the description. Actually, I'll have a link to every part I use here in the description. To complement the pink chassis rails, I got a limited edition breast cancer awareness NSDRC steering servo. It probably isn't in stock right now. I think it's only available for a limited time once every year. Next, let's install the links onto the axles. Here I have a set of my favorite shocks, Hot Racing's 36mm big bore shocks. I really like these shocks, not too long, not too short, and the dampening feels smooth and controlled. It's fairly easy to install the rear shocks, but not the front ones. These knuckle C-hubs have adjustable caster, and when caster is set to max like I have here, it's not possible to access the shock mounts. I had to remove the knuckles in order to install the shocks. With everything back together again, let's work on the wheels and tires. I'm using a set of Injora wheels because they are the wheels these Carnage RC beadlock rings are compatible with. Carnage releases limited batches of these rings from time to time. I was lucky enough to snatch up a set. For tires, I'll be running these Proline Max's Trepadors. They are about 64mm in diameter, the maximum allowed under RCMCCA's Class 2. I've heard great things about these tires. I think they're only possible to buy with these plastic wheels. For inserts, I'll be putting in a pair of modified Injora silicone inserts in the front. I cut off the entire outer ring and many of the supports in the middle to make it super soft. In the rear, I just have the foam inserts that came with the tires. The front wheels also get brass rings in them. To make the wheels even prettier, I'm installing the beadlock rings with Injora's scale hardware. With the rolling chassis assembled, we can now begin the body. I have here a Proline Jeep Cherokee Lexan body. This body is wider than other Proline SCX24 bodies. On top of that, it's not dovetailed, so I have to trim off a lot of it and also raise it really high in order to clear the tires. Of course, my Lexan bodies are never just Lexan. I always give them hard plastic details to dress them up. With this one, I'm going to give it an exo cage. It's my first time building an exo cage. I'm using 3mm styrene rods and basically just approximate the lengths I need and use a lighter to heat up areas I want to bend and Dremel off the parts I don't need. I didn't have enough styrene rods, so I printed some rods using my 3D printer. That's the black ones you see here. I'm using an UV cured adhesive to weld the rods together. Again, it's my first time doing this. I don't know if it's the best adhesive for this application, but it seems to work well for me. I painted the body in Tamiya metallic green. I was hoping it'd be a darker shade. I even backed it with black paint. When I was growing up, there were tons of these Jeeps around. I remember a lot of them are in a dark green color. Proline gives us decals you'd have to cut from the sheet yourself. For the window tint, I did it the same way how real window tints would be applied. I first sprayed the glass and the tint with soapy water, align the tint on the glass, and then squeeze out the water. I found a pair of side mirrors made by CChand in my parts bin. I think these are actually made for the Chevy C10. They aren't really how Jeep XJ mirrors look, but whatever, I like how they are. The cage had to be painted in pieces. If it had been fully assembled, I wouldn't be able to remove it from the body for paint. I painted the cage pink to match the chassis rails. Again, I used UV adhesive to weld the cage together. I don't expect the cage to offer any sort of protection when the truck takes a tumble. It's really just for cosmetics. The cage didn't turn out perfect, but I think it's decent for a first attempt. I also 3D printed vents and glued them to the hood. There we go. What do you guys think? I think this ended up looking pretty good. I don't even know where I got the Monster Energy drink decal. I have a lot of stickers I collected over the years. The body by itself weighs about 40 grams, a bit heavier than typical Lexan bodies, but I think the end result we're seeing here is well worth it. I know the body itself is not optimum for competition. It's unnecessarily long, it's too high and too heavy, but man, it looks good. All right, let's go back and finish the rest of the truck. Here's something I've been waiting for a long time. NerdRC's Gadget transmission. This is a transmission designed to have the motor as low as possible to keep the vehicle's center of gravity down. The kit comes with 3 transmission skids allowing you to position the transmission differently. The motor mount has 9mm bolt spacing, which means it works with motors such as this Furitek Micro Komodo, as well as Furitek Cedar, Mofo RC's Nano Beast, and Nano Bam, Big Kit Tiny Trucks, Icing, etc. This chassis has a 20-degree transmission skid angle, which means the transmission tilts forward by 20 degrees to lower the center of gravity a bit and also to minimize the surface area on the bottom to avoid contact with the rocks. It also lifts up the rear of the transmission, which creates a lot of bottom side clearance when paired with double band links. I'll have to remove this skid for the stock transmission and replace it with this. I just want to give you guys a quick look at the difference in height of the motor between a LCG transmission and a stock transmission with the motor on a center mount. It was at this point I noticed the Tiny Terrain's axle doesn't turn as much as the Mia's isokinetic axle does. I don't know if it's the Injora knuckles I'm using. I think the angle is limited by the contact between the C-hub and the knuckle. On the Injora knuckle, there is a tiny notch, I believe to help with steering, but only on one side. So I think if I make notches on both the knuckles and the C-hub, as well as grind down the metal at all potential contact points, I should be able to get more steering. Let's give it a try. This is the end result of the knuckle, and this is what I've done to the C-hub. It does kind of look like there's a bit of improvement. Let's put everything back together and see if it actually made a difference. I was hoping the improvement would be more drastic. Well, this goes to show how well designed the Mia's isokinetic axles are. If anyone watching has any tips how I can improve the steering angle on the 12CV2 axles, please help me out by commenting below. I mentioned earlier NerdRC's Gremlin specific link setup gives an overall Gladiator wheelbase, but the fronts are shorter, closer to deadbolt fronts. With a motor in the rear facing orientation, the deadbolt front driveshaft is slightly too short, so I'm cutting short a stock C10 driveshaft. A lot of comp guys like running the stock plastic driveshafts, so if anything in the driveline were to break when the truck gets stuck and bound up, it'd be the driveshafts, since they are very easy to replace on the spot. You can get stock driveshafts on their own on Amazon. I'll link to them in the description. The rear links are longer than Gladiator by about 10 millimeters. Stock Gladiator drive shaft should work, but I don't have one. So I'm going to use this RampCrab drive shaft extension. These drive shaft extensions are incredibly useful to have for custom SCX24 builders. They can also lift rear drive shafts out of the way if you ever find your super high clearance rear links tuck up higher than the drive shaft, but we're just using it here because I don't have a drive shaft long enough. Now, the only thing left is the electronics. I'm using a Flysky R4P receiver so I can use my favorite transmitter, Flysky MG4. For ESC, I'm using a Furitek Python Pro so I can send the full 8.4 volts to the steering servo for maximum power and speed. I found this pink cable sleeve with green stripes to match the color scheme of this truck. As for battery, the forward battery tray fits Palm Power's 180 mAh battery perfectly. Larger ones kind of fit too, like this 250 mAh unit. It does sit a bit higher than the front body mount. Likewise with their 350 mAh battery. Alright, with the battery in place, I just have to pop the body on, and there we go, we are done. Let's get over to my skill garage and look at its numbers. Welcome back to the garage. I love how this truck looks here. It weighs in at 505 grams overall, 67% of that in the front and 33% in the back. This is with the smallest 180 mAh battery in it. I'm a bit heavier on the left side. I think I can balance it out by removing the metal case of the Python Pro ESC. However, these numbers don't tell us how high the center of gravity is. So in order to find that out, we'll have to head outside and see how it performs. I gotta say, I think I found the perfect gear ratio for the Furitek Micro Komodo motor. Mofo RC's 33% underdrive in the front axle and 53% underdrive in the rear axle. It gives the sort of slow crawl that is just perfect for my crawl spot. I have this combination with a mini Komodo in another truck and I don't like it as much with that motor. But with a micro Komodo, I think it is the sweet spot. I don't know why it took me so long to try these tires. They really are as good as what people say. And plus, they look pretty good too. Hyper-realistic scaled-down version of the Maxxis Trepadors. One of my absolute favorite tires in real life. I've been trying to find these tires without the plastic wheels, but I haven't been able to. I'm not sure if they exist. As for NerdRC's Gremlin chassis and links, well, I think you can see how good they are by these clips. There's so much breakover clearance, exactly what I need for my type of terrain. You can tell this chassis is designed by someone who competes. The full-length sliders do a great job of protecting the body and help slide against the rocks. I really like them. But of course, I ruined it with this body. I do feel the top heaviness of it. I know I could have trimmed it much more to get it to sit lower, but that would have required cutting up the front grille, and that's where I drew the line. I really want to keep that Jeep XJ front end recognizable. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, but imagine if I have some super lightweight body on it. This would be unstoppable, likely even better than my Venge Gatekeeper. Ultimately, I am glad I decided to build an exo cage for it. Not only it looks amazing, if I can say so myself, it was a fun process putting it together. It really sets the truck apart. I rolled over a few times and the UV adhesive did break apart at some spots, but I probably still use the same adhesive if I want to build another exo cage because it gives a nice sandable surface to paint over. I don't know, maybe you are aware of some other adhesive that works better. I'd love to hear from you. I'm not clearing gates in this shakedown run, but the lack of steering angle, comparatively speaking, strangely doesn't bother me very much. Maybe it would if there were actually gates, but I do want to get more out of the axle if I can. So if you have these axles and know what else I can do to them to make them turn even more, please let me know in the comments. Alright, this is the last video of the year. I'll most likely be back in January. I'm not too sure what the next one is going to be. I have multiple builds in process right now, not just SCX24. There's a FCX18, even a 1/10. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps. If you got any questions about the NerdRC chassis kit or anything you see here, feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.